one of the things you said is kind of needing, if you're a pet person, you find a pet franchise, you love food, finding a food franchise. But for dry cleaning, do you need to love dry cleaning or like, or, pesticides? Do you need to love pesticides, for example, or how passionate do you need to be about that industry?
Well, I can tell you that I did not wake up aspiring to be in the dry cleaning industry,
Yeah.
as probably most people didn't. And I think what we probably are the most boring franchise in a typical franchise consultant's library.
Mm,
However, with that boring business model becomes a model that's been around for decades, is recession resistant, has a repeating revenue model. Our customers come in every week, and is not a fad. And that not a fad piece, I think, is really important for people getting into a business because I fell for it once. Everybody was doing the froyo franchise thing, and I was driving by these stores and saying, "Man, look at the lines, look at the kids going in these things. This will be around forever." And opened
yeah.
and built four of those things, and as quickly as they built, they went from $1 million to 500,000 overnight, and
Mm,
500 to 300 2 nights later. So
yeah.
I think that's what we bring to the table. We're easy to scale. It's not a fad, and there is that
Yeah.
repeating revenue.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. And as you know, you had the mentor in franchising that was 15 years older than you. You've been to countless of the international franchise shows. You've been in franchising for a while. I just want to kind of speed up this question, then we'll head back to where you were talking about what are, as someone kind of contemplating franchising, what are that like that's a big lesson right there. Just a recession resistant, not a fad. But what's some other advice you give to someone kind of evaluating those opportunities and kind of what to look for and how the competitors are, are there like a dime a dozen, are new brands coming up every single month with the same industry, or what is kind of advice
Yeah.
you'd have to someone contemplating what industry is right for them?
Well, in the waterfall of things that I would tell if it was, my brother getting into franchising, number one would be the fad thing, because I do think a lot of people walk through those trade shows and they see the latest and greatest thing that's super hot today. And I very often will say to people, just, recognize like next year when we're at this conference, will that company still be here? And a lot of times they're not. So look and think about the companies that are going to be around forever. The
Mm,
other thing is just like the operating piece of it. Is it a match for you? In other words, is this, are you fixing garage doors and it's one guy in a truck and that's what you love to do, which is a perfect fit for somebody? Or are you looking for something that you can easily scale up and, sort of manage from a strategic perspective, and you're not the, owner operator of that business. So being able to scale it, and that scaling, I think, is really important. And what I mean by that for some people is you open a McDonald's, it's $2 million to build, and you open unit two, it's $2 million, and rinse and repeat, it's 2 million bucks each and every time you do it.
right.
In our world, when you build that first store, we typically would build a plant with you, and that's about a $500,000 to $600,000 build. The next unit that you build is not going to be 500 to 600. It's going to be like 80 to 100 grand. It'll be a
Mm,
satellite store that works in this hub and spokes, and then we can open a route for 25 grand, put a truck in a market and build that market. So there are lots of businesses now that enable you to scale without it being a capex times 100%. And I think
yeah.
that's super important.
Yeah, that just the economies of scale is so powerful. And how, I talk to a lot of people that really want to scale a business, and you don't need, you can get involved through a single unit, but the multi-unit, the area development, there's just so many different models for someone if you are looking to scale. So we are definitely going to dive into that. And one of the funny things that you kind of bring up the international franchise show and trying to evaluate fads, just from my experience, you'll see a lot of people, they come in with like a lunch tray and they just go to all the food franchises. They get a nice meal out of it. They show up every day, kind of do the same thing. And it's very easy to say, people are lined up there. That seems like an attractive business model, but really playing it out, one of the things I tell people is, do you or someone would they use it? How consistent would they use it? And how long term would they use it? So really just trying to evaluate the long term of the business And, I always advise people as kind of their advisor, look at that track record, and someone that was looking at financial statements and investment strategies. The number one thing that any investor looks at is those 3 and 5 year returns. So does that franchise have that 3 and 5 year track record? Not to mention some of these franchises have a 40-year track record. So it's just so impressive how it really limits that risk tolerance that you need. Whereas someone like yourself starting the business really took a much greater risk. So someone in corporate America that doesn't necessarily want to take that huge leap of faith, you're going to go through a full education process so that we can see, maybe it may not even be right for you, but at least you can be comfortable making that decision, so that if you are one of those, according to Dennis Schooley in my last interview, talked about how 70% of people have thought about business ownership, but only a percentage of people actually take those steps. So allowing you to make that educated decision on your future, on your family's future, more importantly. So kind of going back to your process, now so have you owned